Hi everyone, welcome back to Raising Rockstars, the podcast, which I know that I have totally neglected in the past few months, and it's not like I have a really good reason for it. There are multiple reasons why I haven't been able to publish regular episodes, and I think the main reason is that artist management generally comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of unpredictability as well. And I think in combination with high workloads, lots of traveling, I was away for 5 weeks in Australia and then Thailand. And I've just come back recently and I'm just like resetting the routines and the schedule again. So it's been a pretty interesting time lately. Lots of like really awesome things on the horizon for the clients that I'm working with. And I got to spend some really meaningful time with Voyager as well when I went to Perth, and that was just simply incredible. And to be honest with you, I wasn't really thinking about much else during that time other than just spending quality time and making the most of my time over there, because I don't get to go to Australia that often. But given that I hadn't seen the guys in like nearly 2 years, it was really important for me to just focus on what was happening over there and making a few plans. And then also I had Unprocessed touring the east coast of Australia for the first time, and that was a hugely successful tour. And then the guys went on to Southeast Asia and we met them there in Bangkok, and then they went on to Japan, and now they're in China selling out shows with almost 1,000 people in a country that they've never been to before. It's such an awesome time for the clients that I'm working with, and there's a very busy festival season coming up. And just for the company in general, our bands are having a great time out on the road. There are lots of tours, lots of new releases, lots of forthcoming releases, some really exciting partnerships happening. And it takes up a lot of time and effort, and the bands are always going to be the priority. So while I'm really passionate and enthusiastic about doing the podcast and all of the other associated things to do with Raising Rockstars, it's something that I do in my spare time. And lately I've not had a lot of that. So I appreciate the patience and the fact that you guys have stuck around and continue to watch and express interest in what I'm doing on the side. So yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate that. Now, there are a few topics that I thought I would explore in the next episodes of these podcasts. And ultimately, I think one of the main questions that frequently pops up in a lot of the consultations that I'm doing, and also when we're talking about development generally in the music industry, is the strength of your network. And what does networking really mean in the grand scheme of things in the music business? Or in business in general, actually, I should say, because I personally feel that success really does depend on the strength of your network and the strength of the relationships that you've been able to build over the years whilst in pursuit of a successful career in the music industry. So I'll tell you a little bit about my humble beginnings. So I'm from Southeast London. I was born and bred in a place called Croydon, which a lot of people tend to avoid nowadays. But that's basically where I grew up. I went to university in Hertfordshire. But prior to that, I actually attended the Brit School of Performing Arts and Technology, and that's based in Croydon. And a lot of really amazing artists and creatives come out of the Brit School because there's a really broad scope of strands that they have there. So they have like music, musical theatre, they have dance, they have like a production strand. And I specifically studied BDC, which is broadcast and digital communications. And at the time, I really wanted to pursue a career in media. And I thought that being a journalist or doing something relating to that would be a really interesting career path for me. When I started combining the interests of what I was doing on the media side, but then with my passion for music and my friends that were in the music strand and some of the bands that I was working with on like a friendship level at the time, because I was helping some of the bands get local gigs, or I was designing some posters or something like that on Microsoft Picture It, by the way. I didn't have Photoshop back then, so it was Microsoft Picture It was the program that I was using. But anyway, I digress. So building a network started with me talking to the bands that were around at the time, talking to the promoters, talking to some of the local venues. And then when I was studying my course at the Brit School, one of the modules was radio. And I spoke about this in a former podcast. But when I did this module, it really opened the doors for me to start connecting with the real world, like the real time people that were like actively working in the industry at that time. So I was reaching out to people who were working at music festivals. I reached out to people who worked at labels, publicists, you name it. And then I started getting interviews in the bag so that I could go and talk to them about their experience and what their job entails and start building the relationship from there. And as a result of these interviews, I actually got 2 internships, because my first ever internship was at Spine Farm Records, and I connected with them on the same day as I went to go and interview Adam at the Noise Cartel, who are an amazing PR company in the rock and metal world. And interestingly enough, when I spoke to Adam, I think at the time the Noise Cartel were handling a bunch of the PR for Spine Farm. And then I started joining the dots and I was like, okay, so Spine Farm's a label, Noise Cartel's a publicity company. And then you started joining the dots, because then the editor of Metal Hammer was also at a gig that I attended that night. And then I met him. And then as a result, you start meeting various different people within the business. You start to understand and comprehend the roles and what they do and what their interaction is with the artist, because to some degree, everyone is working with the bands. This network started growing, and there are a whole bunch of people that I connected with during that time when I started doing my internships, both at Spine Farm Records and at the Noise Cartel, whether it be the journalists or radio presenters or other publicists or other labels or managers. And you meet so many people along the way, and it's just about staying in touch with them, keeping that connection. Because during my time at the Noise Cartel, I met a lot of journalists, particularly at music festivals and when we did gigs, assisting with the coordination of some of the interviews. And in time, you just build a little bit of a rapport with them. And so when I started my own company doing PR, I already had existing relationships with a bunch of the journalists as a result of me doing the internship. So that laid a really strong foundation for me to start doing PR for bands, because I already had like a little Excel spreadsheet featuring all of the people that I'd met. I'd collected some of the contact details from them at music festivals and said, hey, would you mind if I got in touch in future? After this internship, I'll probably start my own company, or maybe I'm going to continue doing PR in some capacity. And that was really great for me. And a lot of these people I still work with and talk to today. A lot of the people are still going strong. A lot of people have really developed and grown in their roles. A bunch of the people are now like DJs at BBC Radio 1, and back in the day they were working for Total Rock Radio and a whole bunch of other radio stations that we worked with at the time that are still going, which is a huge testament to that community. Generally speaking, putting yourself out there and really just getting to know as many people as possible in the early stages of your career is going to be so crucial to long-term growth, because you don't know where these other people are going to go and how useful they may become in future. There are people who have grown their careers to the point whereby they've then gone on to work at really established record labels or booking agencies, or maybe they become a promoter, or you just don't know. So it's really important to keep positive relationships with people and just to stay in touch and just keep in touch with what they're doing, where they're going, let them know what you've been up to, and really just like nurture that relationship. And it may not always be the case that you can always do business together and there's like always like an opportunity there. Like one thing that I specifically don't like is when someone's just on a mission to like specifically just do business and business only all the time, because we're all human beings at the end of the day, and it's not always about this transactional approach. And I definitely find that the most meaningful relationships come from just having just a little bit more authenticity there, genuine care for the person and what they've done and interest, rather than just what can you do for me? Or what can I do for you? It's not always about that. Sometimes it is, because again, we are in the business, but I think it's ultimately the strength of the relationships and what you can look to achieve in the future, again, is just based on having these well-rounded relationships with people on both a personal and also a business level. Nowadays, specifically when I'm looking for partners for my clients to work with, and I made this mistake a number of times along the way, whereby I've partnered with certain companies when things haven't necessarily gone to plan, you haven't shared the same vision, it was purely based upon a business deal. But long term, the best relationships come from the ones whereby you share the same vision, there's a level of compatibility there, they're part of a similar network, you guys have this mutual understanding of what ideally you want to achieve for the client that you're representing. It's very important. The network that you build is relevant to what you aim to achieve in the future. I've attended a lot of conferences back in the day. I think that was a really good practice for me, actually, was to be put in a room with a whole bunch of people and to be able to go through the process of identifying who are the people in this room that I need to be speaking to. Because it's not going to be everyone. And I spoke to a lot of people back in the day. I went round and I introduced myself and I found out like what people were doing and where they were working, who they represented. And on a business level, you just gather this information. And this was really interesting for me because to this day, there are some of these people at the conferences that one, I'm still in touch with and I still speak to, but also two, I've never done business with them and never had the opportunity to. But they're still really interesting people to know. I love having an overview of what they're up to because you just never know. Maybe they also know someone who can help you at some point. And I think that's also important because it's not just about your network, it's about the network of other people that you have relationships with and their willingness to help you and to advise and to be able to make introductions as well. So yeah, just generally having a really concrete foundation to build your career upon is based on having positive relationships in the music business. And I think it's important as well to cast a wide net, but also just refine a little bit, refine who are the people you really enjoy working with, that you really connect with on a personal level? Who are the people that you see yourselves doing long-term business with? Who do you really want to work with in future and to build that relationship? Because I've had it in the past where I've contacted a label for many years and they always turn down my bands from the beginning. And because my bands at the time were just too small and they weren't an interesting prospect to them at that time because it was just like, we don't see ourselves doing business here, but stay in touch. I'm always up for listening to new music. And over time you go back and you go back again. And then either you're the annoying person who's returning to them over a period of time, or eventually they're going to take notice because they see one, the persistence, they see two, the development in what you've been doing. And three, they then go, okay, you know what, this person really means business and here is a great opportunity. Let's finally work together. I've been faced with rejection many times over the years when I've tried to forge relationships with certain people, but it never deterred me. I always just kept going back. So it takes time. It was the same with Eurovision. It was the same with signing my bands to record labels. It's the same with booking agencies. Like it takes years sometimes to gain a booking agent for some of your bands. But when you keep going back to someone who you really want to represent your band because you know that they're going to do a good job, and you're like, hey, we've done this tour now. We did this support tour. We played these festivals. We're now worth these numbers in headline markets. Give us a chance kind of thing. And it's about like also proving your worth, proving the dedication, proving this long-term consistency and persistence in what you've been doing, especially when you're an artist manager. It takes a lot of that sometimes to drill down on people and really get them to be a part of your team. But it's really great when it works out in the end. They're just a few thoughts that I had really. And especially when it comes down to the artist as well, one of the main things that I always encourage my artists to do is connect with other artists, connect with other bands, build that relationship there, look for opportunities for collaboration, comment on their work, give them compliments. If you admire someone, tell them. If you appreciate what they're doing, tell them. If you would like to tour with a band in future, they're more than likely going to choose you if you have an existing relationship and a good rapport and they know that you're a good person to work with and that they're going to have a great time being on the road with you because you spend long periods of time together when you're on tour. Ultimately, bands want to take obviously great musicians but they also want to take good people who are not difficult, people who are professional, people who are easy to work with. Because again, when you're on the road, you're networking, you network with the bands, you network with the crew, you network with the promoters, the venues, the merch vendors, the fans. Again, it's all part of this big network that forms this music industry ecosystem. And that's everyone from networking with the fans to the industry to your peers. So I think it's definitely something where I would put a significant focus on for any growing and development artist, purely because in time you will start to see more opportunity as a result of the strength of your network. That's at least like what I've definitely witnessed in my years of artist management. And I just give an example. Eurovision, when Voyager went to Eurovision, and this is a topic of relevance because obviously Eurovision's coming up now in the next couple of months, and Voyager have been doing their reactions to this year's contestants. And along that journey, when Voyager were representing Australia, the scope of Voyager's network, both locally, nationally, internationally, exploded. And the band was so generous with their time and effort to people. And it doesn't matter whether it was on a national broadcaster media level or state government level, or whether it was like online blogs, fan community media, just generally Eurovision fans. They just gave time to everyone, and people really appreciated that. And what generally happened as a result of that was that things started to snowball, and then people got wind of the fact that Voyager are super fun, they're professional, they're kind, they're willing to give time and space to fans and people who are interested in them. And then more opportunity came our way. Then they were part of Bill Bailey's documentary, and we got invited by the Australian ambassador in the Netherlands to come and do an event over there. And we were invited to do like just so many crazy things around that time. It just goes to show that they invested so much time and effort in really connecting with the fans and remembering names and faces, and always just being there and able to connect with them really on a personal basis. I've also witnessed this as well with a whole bunch of our clients who have done VIP meet and greets at their shows, and also the ones who haven't and who have just gone to the merch desk afterwards. Earthside just did their first ever North American headline tour. And one of the main pieces of feedback I had from our merch manager and tour manager was like, I cannot believe how well the band connect with their fans. Every single night after the show, they take time to chat with everyone, to sign the merch, to take photos. They're remembering the names of people and where they met them and what other shows that they came to. And it just makes people really happy to have that kind of recognition, and the fact that this band that you really love and appreciate just remembers you and really values that you're a part of their community and their network. So there's definitely something to be said there about fostering these positive relationships, and it's something that I am very encouraging of. If you guys have any other ideas for podcast topics, feel free to send them my way, because I'm totally open. I love just having a little bit of a chat and just doing a bit of a brain dump about some thoughts and feelings I have on a particular topic. One other thing that I wanted to raise awareness of is that I have recently launched some toolkits over on my website, luludavis.co.uk/toolkits. There are currently free toolkits on the website. One is the AAA Access All Admin Pass. This is the ultimate artist management toolkit that fully encompasses over 30 templates, documents, spreadsheets to do with artist management. And this is useful for anyone who is in a little bit more of a developed artist management role, or a self-managing band who's overseeing everything and who takes responsibility of all elements of an artist's career. But now, in addition to this, I have also added the touring toolbox, which is specifically for live crew, bands who are tour managing themselves and taking care of all of the live business. And these documents are specifically all of the live focused documents that are taken from the AAA Access All Admin Toolkit. They're full of people who don't necessarily need like any of the other things relating to like releases. But then on the other hand, I've had a lot of bands reach out to me and say, hey, we're not touring, we're just releasing music. We're mostly like studio projects, or we're not ready for touring yet. Can we please have something that's directed specifically for releasing music? And so I have now also released Release Like a Rockstar. That's also on the website. And again, this is just a curated toolkit featuring all of the documents with all of the release specific tools on there. So really appreciate you checking that out and spreading the word. I'm open to feedback as usual. Feel free to email me. It's lulu@luludavis.co.uk. Thanks again for listening to Raising Rockstars. I'm Lulu Davis and I will see you next time. Thanks again.